Hello, everybody. Tracy, Mrs. JDog Flanagan with you here today. I'm the co-founder and senior vice president at JDog Brands. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Tactical Treasures podcast, sponsored by the JDog Foundation. Our podcast gives veterans, male spouses, active military members, and military family members a voice in the veteran space to speak about their service, how they're affecting their communities post-service, and they share with me a tactical treasure that has helped them in their journey or in their military career, business, or life. Today, I am so excited to have with me Dr. Courtney Barber, who is a Space Force mil spouse and was named the 2024 Armed Forces Military Spouse of the Year. She is a leading expert in psychology and marriage and family therapy, with a specialized focus on enhancing the mental health and resilience of military families. With over 20 years of healthcare experience and a decade spent in the military community, she expertly combines her professional expertise with an intimate understanding of the unique demands of military life to deliver impactful support and empowerment to the community. Courtney is recognized as a thought leader in the field, utilizing her deep knowledge to underscore the critical importance of mental health. She has played a pivotal role in shaping environments where military families can thrive. As the founder and CEO of Barber Family Counseling and Wellness, she demonstrates visionary leadership and a commitment to pioneering advancements in mental health advocacy. Her work extends beyond therapy. Courtney is a key influencer in policy development, advocating for mental health services that are both accessible and specifically designed for the needs of military families. Her initiatives have significantly fortified community bonds and enhanced the well-being of countless individuals within the Space Force community. Hello, Courtney. Welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited for our discussion today, and congratulations for being the mil spouse of 2024. Thank you also for your service and your spouse's service.
Thank you for your support, Tracy, and thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. So I'm excited to get into our discussion today, but before we kind of dive in, I would love to know, mil spouse, I know you had rules. We spoke about this, and I'm very interesting to hear about your rules, how you were not going to be in this role, and how you eventually fell in love with your active service member and married.
Yeah, so in short, I mean, this is a story that's come up a lot lately, which is interesting, but I had rules when I was, dating, as a lot of us, do. And well, there were three. No one in uniform, military, firefighter, police officer, anyone that had that high stress kind of job that I'd heard so many lovely things about. Nobody with children, nobody younger than myself. And my husband's all three. So he was a member of the Air Force at the time. He had been in 5 years or so when we met. And he had a 2-year-old daughter at the time. And he's 2 years younger than me. So yeah, he broke all the
Broke all
rules.
the rules. Sometimes love just, is at the forefront, Um,
Yeah.
but good for you.
Well, one of my recommendations now as a marriage and family therapist too is when we set those rules, it's usually because we have some safeguard there,
Sure.
right? And so if I had held those too strong, I may have missed out on the best opportunity because my husband is my best
Yeah,
friend. And I don't know what my life would look like, but I think it would look vastly different
sure.
if I had not taken that little leap
Yeah.
there to violate my
Yeah.
rules.
I love it. That's a great story. So we all know that mil spouse life is hard. You ladies are amazing. Well, and men too. I have to say, I haven't had a male spouse on that's been a male. I think I'm going to have to ferret that out and have one on because I'd love to hear that viewpoint. But
I have a great
oh,
one. If you want some advice, he won this year too. Actually, a couple really good ones won this year, but I have one in
really?
mind if you
Oh,
want that
yeah.
connection.
Send me an email. I'd love to have him on. So anyway, as I was saying, we know male spouse life is hard, but I would love to know what some of the rewards are that you have found in military life.
Yeah, I don't know if I've been asked that question as deeply. I think most people seek out the problems that we face,
Sure.
right? And what are some of the things we're up against versus some of the things that define military life in a beneficial way. And so I think narrative is huge when you're sitting in our seat. And I think a lot of I don't like to use the term resilient too much because of it's kind of
Hmm.
overuse in a lot of ways, and I sometimes it takes away from the struggle.
Sure.
Like, oh, just be resilient, but the resiliency doesn't come at ease, right? Like it's
Right.
hard. And so one of the things that I can say that's a benefit that I was I love being American. I'm proud to have been born here. I'm really excited that, to be an American. But my level of patriotism was definitely has definitely increased and exemplified through my relationship with my husband. I think when you are a civilian, you may not understand this world as much, or the commitment, the sacrifice, or the kind of toll that's paid to protect this country. And without that protection, what this country might look like it may look vastly different, right? And so
Sure.
I think one of the good things for me is being a part of that. I love being part of a system and a family that is protecting this country and our independence and our belief systems. I believe in those. And so it fills my cup to have that belief system, kind of reinforced, and then to network with leadership inside the military, other members of the military, as well as the spouses and children in this unique way that can only really be described if you've seen it.
Sure.
But we interact in a very unique way. We typically identify really quick with one another. We typically will kick off a picnic really quick with one another, or a coffee meetup really quick with one another, because one of the other benefits and sometimes drawbacks, a lot of times, drawback 50-50 split, I'd say, is that we move around a lot.
Sure.
And so we get used to making friends and making acquaintances and trying to, find community a lot of the time. And then the opposite of that would be isolation, right? And so it's kind of that 50-50 split, but it can be a really good benefit. And then sometimes we get to PCS to really cool places. I remember when we were getting our orders to here in Colorado, 5 out of the 7 bases on the list were in Colorado. So I was like, well, I guess I'm going to Colorado. And at the time, I'm from California. I only know California. I am a straight Californian. I'm like, nope, I love California. I'm never leaving California. It's sunshine. This is what I'm doing. And now I'm like, nope, I love Colorado. I want to stay in Colorado. It's beautiful here. And so the other benefit, I just had some friends that are over in Germany. The travel for their children to Germany is beautiful. Their children are going to get to learn things from another culture, another setting that they've never experienced before. And then the 50-50 split comes in when you talk about EFMP and hurdles that exist there in this move.
Sure.
So I think that you can see the beauty in some of it and some of the, benefits, and then you can almost parallel them sometimes to some of the drawbacks that we experience too. But there are some really, really cool things.
Right, right. And yeah, I love that you bring all of that to the table and what you had to say, because I myself, I'm a civilian, but Jerry, with our company and our foundation and everything we do, we are on the fringes of the veteran space, right? And I know for me, being on that fringe and being able to attend, black tie events, to we just recently attended our community salutes event, which is a foundation organization run by Dr. Ken Hartman, that has ceremonies all across the country for high school men and women who have pledged after high school to go right into service. And to be a part of those events as a civilian, I understand that patriotism and has fueled me and has come alive in me in a way that I don't think it ever. I mean, I've always been patriotic, but to have be on the fringe of the veteran community the way we have has been so rewarding and such a blessing to be able to experience patriotism at a new level.
Yeah,
So
I think you make a good statement there too, Tracy, that wearing the uniform is a privilege.
true, it
Wearing the
is.
uniform that represents the independence and strength of the United States of America. I mean, I sound super patriotic now, but it is a
Sure.
privilege, and it is something that some of the younger generations, as they come in and they are making those pledges, I hope they understand that they are entering into a space where a large percent of our population is not military affiliated, right? We're a very small percent. They do very big work.
Right.
And again, our country isn't what it is if we don't do that work. And so as the newer generations come in, I'm hoping that they are coming in with that knowledge and that understanding that it is not an easy life by any means. But when you're committed to it and you believe in it and you are bought in to why you're doing what you're doing, why sometimes we have to embrace the suck, why
Hmm.
we are here to
Yeah.
serve. right? It's servitude. And so why we're here to serve, once you have that core belief system, I think it's a game changer to your overall career as well. And when I work with military members, we go through that. The narrative dispositions, because you will have to embrace the suck sometimes. And even as a mil spouse, when my husband's gone, and he's gone frequently, here and there, it's really on me to have that conversation with our children.
Sure.
We chose this. They're sacrificing, right? We made this choice. When I married my husband, I knew he was a service member. We had our children after that. When he had his first child, he was already in. So there was a choice that was made for them. So it's up to me to help them kind of regulate that narrative and say, Dad's job is important, and this is why it's important. And so sometimes Daddy has to go away, just like sometimes pilots have to go
Sure.
away for
Right.
Southwest or
Yeah.
Delta or American,
Right.
right? And so really it's how do you want to perceive your relationship in this lifestyle and utilize that to either embrace the suck and have a community and find, ways to cope during some of the harder sucks, or do you want it to kind of allow it to force you into a different headspace that can be more negative and heavy? And that can be hard, but that's why I'm a
Right.
therapist, right? So like that's what
Yeah,
we do.
which is a great lead in to my next question. So you obviously, so you have Barber Family Counseling and Wellness, and so you have talked to me about that journey. How did that come about? And I know that you've kind of used it to sort of delve in to the military community and specifically Space Force community, and the mental health issues. So I'd love to hear about. I know that was a lot of questions at once, but
That's okay. I'll take it, but you might have to push the pause button because I got a lot to say there
okay,
for
yeah,
you.
go ahead.
But so, in short, when I got with Ken, I was on the nurse waiting list in California, and I had been working in medicine since I was 18. So I was a medical assistant, a phlebotomist, an EKG tech. I had done pretty much all the things. Established a career at Kaiser. For anyone in California, Kaiser's a big deal. They're union. I was a union steward. They have really good salary, lines and such. And so I was working at Kaiser, and I was working night shift in the ER. And Ken asked me one day if I love what I did. And I said, I like it. I save lives, right? We save lives in the emergency rooms. I like it. I've been there for 9 years. So it's what I knew for a while. But I didn't, and he was like, what do you love? And I always loved our mental health cases that would come in. And usually it was teenagers. And I had this ability to go in there and they would talk to me. And I always knew that. I was my friend's therapist. I was kind of, then I was in the room and they were opening up to me. And I was like, but it's underserved, it's underappreciated, it's
Right.
underpaid. It's a really tough area of work. I mean, honestly, you have to go get a master's degree, at the very least, and you're talking anywhere, up to $100,000 in student loan debts to be able to do that for most
Right.
people. And you get out, and the public sector pays you. But I mean, in all honesty, some places I can make more money as a manager at Walmart.
Mm.
And so there was this kind of disparity there for me. If I follow my passion, I'll be broke. I'm an independent female now at this time. I'm in my late 20s when I met Ken. So and he was like, well, if I make it to where you're financially stable and you do what you love, you won't be as stressed and it won't feel like work. Now, in my head, I heard what he said. It was very, very sweet that he was offering to financially pay, cover
Right.
me. But what I heard in my head was, how come I've never thought about that? If I love what I do, then maybe that's just where I'm supposed to be. So it took 3 days. Three happens to also be mine and Ken's favorite number. Our birthdays are inverted, and
Oh,
I'm 6'3", he's 3'6", and so our favorite number is three. 3 days later, I changed my bachelor's, changed it over to psychology, and went straight bachelor's, master's, right into my doctorate. And I think what I found in that was that when you're doing what you love, the schoolwork doesn't feel as tedious anymore.
sure.
It didn't feel as
Hmm.
hard anymore. It didn't feel as stressful
Right.
anymore. Same thing with my job now. I don't often feel like I'm working. I love being in the room with my clients. But once I entered into the mental health space, I quickly realized there were some huge problems. And while I had heard about them before, you don't typically understand things until it happens to you, right? Until you're actually seeing it. And one of the things I saw was this gap in the mental health services that were available especially to our military members and dependents when we got to Colorado. So I promise you, there was somewhere in the city where I'm on a wait list for my postpartum depression 7 years ago, where I called to get
Oh my
services and I never
gosh.
got a call back.
Wow.
Nobody ever called me back. I never heard anything back. And a lot of providers, they won't take TRICARE out here because of some of the issues we've had with TRICARE as providers. We can talk about that later. So what happened was I said, I want to change this. So I'm going to create a group practice. And when we talk to clinicians about joining us in the group practice, I do speak to them a little bit about the mission and vision of this practice to serve its community. So we're still a business, as you know, we have overhead, we still have bills to pay, et
Sure.
cetera. So we have to bring in some revenue. But we've built a system that hopefully has enough diversity in it where we can support the military members at a military rate while we awaited to see what TRICARE would do in the credentialing process with TRICARE. I think what a lot of people don't understand is how long it can take to credential with TRICARE
Oh my
and
gosh.
how it's got these barriers. So, for example, I was trying to credential with them back in 2019. They kept losing the faxes, and their panels were closed, and they were opened, and they're closed. So I ended up getting with a company who had an inside person there that would tell them when it opened. We got me in. I submitted our recent application with a roster of 9 other providers to get them on with TRICARE on February 29th. I got confirmation on March 7th. I called to check in on May because they said they had 90 days. And I just called in last week and they hadn't started many of our people. And they have 30 days to put them in their system
Oh my
and then 60
gosh.
days from there. And nobody was where they needed to be. And we are, I don't, that math is not 30, 60, or 90 days, right?
Right.
We are kind of past that now or coming up on it. And so I started doing some research there. And I know that it's kind of new news, but TriWest is taking over TRICARE again for HealthNet. TriWest held the contract for 17 years, I believe. And so now one of my advocacy points is, okay, who's going to hold TriWest accountable then for some of the errors that we saw when they did hold the contract? Because at the end of the day, the dependents and the veterans rely on these services the most.
Right.
We rely on it the most, and not all services can happen on base. So when they can't happen on base, if nobody in the community wants to take TRICARE because we don't get reimbursed, they have some of the lowest reimbursement rates compared to their commercial counterparts, and it takes forever to get paneled with them. Our access to care is severely diminished, even in cities like Colorado Springs, where we have 4 bases in a post. We have such a high population here, and a lot of providers in Colorado Springs will not work with TRICARE because of the history and the mismanagement of their admin.
Oh my gosh. That is awful.
So I started, it's horrible. And so I started the group practice to try to give some level of solution. The secondary piece of that too is that sometimes military members they don't want people to know that they're being seen. Some spouses don't want people to know that they're being seen. So offering that military rate has allowed us to say, hey, you can have your privacy too, should you choose to do so. So even once we get TRICARE worked out, they can opt out and they can still kind of be seen in privacy, because while the military as a whole is trying to kind of change the narrative around mental health, we're still coming from generations of mental health issues not being accepted in the military
Right.
world. It's kind of this idea of you must be more than human, right? That we want you to do very hard things and then somehow you're supposed to go home and pretend that never happened. Where some of the things some of our military members see and experience, and their spouses and dependents experience, we can't just shove them down and shove them away that way. It
Right.
becomes a very unhealthy pattern that
Hmm.
leads to suicidal ideation,
Right.
poor narratives, very low self-esteem, feeling inadequate because we have not established a perfect balance, which we probably won't because we're human, right? But we haven't established this perfect balance of being able to do the mission and serve the mission and still be a human being. So the military rate kind of helps with that too, so they can be seen without it, being on anyone's
Oh,
radar.
wow. Okay. So that's the military rate. So, in other words, it doesn't necessarily go through TRICARE, but you offer the same rate as if it was going through TRICARE.
lesser
Lesser.
a lesser
Oh,
rate
wow.
than what we would charge TRICARE. So it's a military rate just for veterans, dependents, and active duty
Right.
members.
Wow.
And then of course it varies depending on the licensure of your provider, et cetera. There's things there, but I think we max out right now at $65 a
Oh,
session. So
wow.
in comparison to our,
Right.
standard individual rates across the city, which sit about 130,
Wow.
140, it allows that access to care with some level of
Right.
privacy.
Oh, wow. That's amazing that you do that. Wow. Because, ugh, what a mess. What a mess of a system. It's such a shame. But good for
Yeah.
you for stepping up and doing something
Hello,
about it.
viewers and listeners. I would like to introduce you to the JDog Foundation, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the prevention of veteran suicide and the healing of veterans' mental health. 100% of all proceeds received by the JDog Foundation goes directly to several foundations focused on the mission of saving veterans' lives. Each partner is hand-selected by our executive director, Jerry Flanagan, with input from the assistant director, Tracy Flanagan, and the JDog Foundation board members. Our foundation's motto: saving lives, one veteran at a time. Go to jdogfoundation.org to take a look at everything that we're doing there and the organizations that we're partnered with. You can also donate, and there's also a support line if you're in need of help. Thanks. Check us out, jdogfoundation.org.
Art, so I know you have two practices in Colorado Springs, correct? And then a practice in Las Vegas. So do you help nationwide, or can you do virtual
Yep.
care?
So I try to advocate nationwide,
Yeah,
right?
right.
But to help a population, you have to be licensed in that state usually.
Okay.
It's one of the things that we're also working on and advocating for. I don't take on this fight. There are groups of people that are doing this for us, and I thank them heavily. But we have things called the Side Pact, and they're working on it for marriage and family therapists and professional counselors as well, where certain states have decided that they'll allow us to cross state lines. And a lot of the advocacy that I have kind of had my 2 cents in was using military members as an example of I am now licensed in Florida and Virginia only because I had members that moved there that I knew would have a hard time rebuilding with another
Right.
clinician and needed that continuity of care. So I took it upon myself to license in those states to provide those services. And then, of course, I'm licensed in Nevada because the practice exists there. But in most states in the country, the clinician must be licensed there to see you. So if you're PCSing a bunch, you may lose your
That's
therapist
right.
because that therapist can't practice in that
Ugh,
state.
wow.
So we try. And so what I do too is when that's happening to a member, whether they're in our practice or not, a lot of people will email me and I'll just try to link them up with a provider in their incoming state, just so they have
Right.
resources to a few clinicians that I have vetted and talked to that say, hey, I have openings right now. I can take this person. I take TRICARE. I don't take TRICARE. And I don't just do that for military members. I do that for pretty much anyone that's going through that because I have my own therapist. And I know that if I had to move my therapy, that I would kind of feel a certain type of way. You build a relationship with that person.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And it's very hard the last thing you want to do is change providers midstream, because then it just
Yeah.
advocates telling your story over and over and over again, and that's one thing that they say is not a good thing for a veteran to have to do. Yeah.
100%. And remember that even when you hit your milestones or these aha moments, I like to call them, which are always incredible to watch, we are complex humans. And by the time that we typically enter into therapy, especially as a military member, you've already lived a whole childhood, a whole adolescence, and a whole young adulthood. And now you have this component as
Hmm.
well. So I always tell people to think about like a spider web where everything is kind of interlinked. And when we
Hmm.
start to look at those different links that exist there, we might have an aha moment in this area that then opens up another thing like, uh-oh, all right, I realize I'm actually having, difficulties in this
Right.
area. And so then you work on healing that area. But this idea that some people have, especially the policymakers and insurance companies, oddly but not, is that 6, 12 sessions, you should be good to go. And that's just not realistic, especially as every day we are hopefully growing and
Right.
experiencing life and encountering events, and some need more support and processing than
Hmm.
others. So I think there's advocacy for that as well. It's not just normalizing mental health, but also normalizing that it's not a quick fix. And you didn't get this way overnight. Well, sometimes with traumatic events we did, but typically there's other things that happened,
Right.
right? And so it takes a little bit longer to heal from that.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Definitely. Great conversation. And it sounds like you're doing amazing work, and advocating in the veteran and military community space that obviously needs so much assistance with trying to get care and get care covered. It sounds like it's a real problem. And I don't know. I just don't understand. Our military does so much for our country, and it's just terrible that we can't figure out how to get them the resources that they need in every area of their life, once they're, even if they're still serving or once they're done serving, it's just, I just don't get it. I could get on a soapbox, but
Yeah. Yeah, me
I
too.
know, right?
As you can tell.
Really. But anyway, thank you that you are advocating and doing such great work. To pivot, I would love to know what your tactical treasure is. What would you like to share with us today?
So I took some time to think about this, and um, a lot of people often ask, how do you do everything that you do? So, for listeners that don't know my personal bio, I'm a mom of three kids, and one of our kids is special needs. She's 7 and she's almost completely nonverbal. She's autistic. And then I have the businesses, and I also have a hard time with childcare. Like, not only is it very expensive, but I have a hard time with people understanding our middle child and being and just trusting that. So I've had our kids 24/7 basically since, they were born. For all intents and purposes, they're always with me, unless they're in school. And so when people ask me that question, I'm always bewildered because I don't consider myself to be an anomaly. And so I started thinking after we did our first call on how I'm going to answer this question. And I really truly believe that passion is that offset for me. I have such a passion for the work that I'm doing that it makes it worth it. So when I'm extra tired or I'm frustrated, it I push through because I have passion behind what I'm doing and I believe in what I'm doing. I think that right now as we kind of come up on all these different changes and things like that, it's really important to consider what we're doing and how we might impact somebody else. So when I mentor other spouses who have ideas for entrepreneurship, it fills my cup. I don't charge them for that. Why? Because I'm not an expert in what to do everywhere. I'm an expert in like kind of what not to do. I've made my fair share of mistakes,
Yeah,
but it fills my cup to give back and not ask for anything. You're already doing enough. And the fact that you're putting yourself into a vulnerable state to even consider doing something more for the community or something for, a subset of people. I just want to be a part of helping to inspire that because that's what humanity is to me. It's us coming together, supporting each other, working together. So my tactical treasure on how I get through some of the harder parts is I believe in what I'm doing. And if I don't, if I start to question it, doesn't feel right, then I usually switch up what I'm doing and go in a different direction. I consult with others. I trust a group of people I consult with and I say, hey, what do you think about this? I'm not happy doing this anymore. What should I do? That way I can also kind of chew out whether or not it's an insecurity or imposter syndrome or anything like that or stress reaction. But I'll use my community support system to address whether or not I feel passionate about something. And if not, you pivot, just like you just said. Pivot in conversations, you can pivot in life too.
true,
But you have to have that foundation and that belief system to do it.
true. I love that. That's a great tactical treasure. That is. I mean, we spend so much time every day waking up and giving ourselves to something, whatever that something is, whether it's our family, whether it's our job, whether it's whatever. And if you're not happy and you're not passionate about it and you don't like what you're doing, something's wrong and you need to change. You
Yeah.
need to pivot. And
Yes.
it takes courage to pivot though, because you
It does
you
for
can get
sure.
into complacency and you can think, oh, okay. But, at the end of the day, you got to be able to wake up every morning and be joyful and be happy and be passionate about whatever you're
Yeah.
doing.
And I think it's not joyful all the time,
No,
right? I have my bad days just
sure.
like everybody else. But one of the things is, as an existentialist, I only have one life.
True.
And I just had my 40th birthday, and I promise I remember my 15th like it was yesterday. So I am keenly aware right now of how fast that 25 years just went. And I don't know if I have 25 more years. Like, I don't know how much is promised to
Sure.
me. So if you can put yourself in those shoes sometimes, I think it makes those harder decisions when you're feeling complacent a little bit easier. Like, man, maybe I don't want to do this for the next 5 years.
Right.
What am I
Right.
doing? And then lean into the people that you have, lean into your support systems. And if you don't have that, start to reach out, especially male spouses, start to reach out to your male spouse community and put feelers out for who you might connect with that might give you that. Because as humans, we all need that and we can all find that. I might not be everyone's cup of tea, and everyone's not mine, but there are certain people that you definitely vibe with. And once you have that vibe, especially women.
Yeah.
The fact that you're having me here, Tracy, and you're not just supporting male spouses, but you want to empower people, those people that like to empower, inspire others, lean into those people. They're important.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. I totally believe that. And not everything's going to be perfect. Life isn't perfect. It never promised us perfection. But, at the end of the day, the good stuff needs to, outdo the bad or outdo the stress, So,
Yes.
and yeah, well said. That's a great treasure. I love it. Any advice for your fellow mill spouses navigating this military life?
Yeah, I think, I think we've touched on that a little bit, but community is important. So I'm what you call an ambivert, meaning that I have extrovert and introverted features. And what that means is I love being an extrovert when I feel like it. And then I need to introvert so I can recharge my batteries and I can kind of I can cradle both worlds, but I have to be able to recharge. And so when I first became a military spouse, I remember thinking, especially being older, I don't know what this community is. I am not interested in your barbecues. I'm not interested in you going to get, tea or coffee. I have work to do. I now have children. One of the things I had to dive into myself was that I also wasn't comfortable because I was older, and because Kenneth was enlisted and then he became an officer. He was a younger officer in rank, even though he had experience in service. I think that there was a part of me that felt insecure about being in the room with some of those people and not knowing where I would fit in.
Right.
And did they understand me? Some of these women and men have been military spouses since they were 18, 19. I'm coming into this world that is vastly different than what I'm used to. And I wasn't sure. And to be very clear, I'm very proud of our Space Force leadership right now. The Space Force is unique in that we have people and members from other branches that have come into the Space Force. So it's not just Air Force and the Space Force, even though space has been a part of the Air Force for decades.
Right.
But what that's doing is it's opening our eyes to different culture settings and different experiences that others have in different branches and kind of making it more of an eclectic setting. There's growing pains, as you can probably imagine.
Sure.
But I'm so proud of our Space Force leadership and that I have heard their consistent efforts and message of inclusion and changing the way that we involve families into what's a confidential world, right? It's a top secret world.
Right.
So how do we integrate families and family involvement and support? And so the more that I see that, the more I want to be a part of that. I'm not really a big one for cliques. I'm not really a big one for anyone thinking they're better than anybody else or hold any, hierarchy more than anybody else in the human world. When you're in a professional setting, yes, we all have our employers or bosses or chiefs or generals or lieutenants, right? Like I get it, but we're all still human. And so once I figured out how, like, oh, I can just kind of be myself as long as I gave myself permission to.
Right.
Again, I might not be everyone's cup of tea, but it lessened my stress levels. And so then I wanted to participate more. I began to see the value in our picnics and the kids getting together and finding new friends. I'm still not the kind of person that goes to coffee every week. I don't have the bandwidth for that. But for those that do, or even those that are very introverted and are nervous about that, but are feeling lonely, there are online Facebook groups that you can engage in and just kind of watch things from the background, which is usually where I like to be. There are usually local coffees and teas in the community. You always have your AFRC who can link you with, it's not the Key Spouse program anymore, but mentors, spouse mentors, whether they're in that program or not, that can support
Hmm.
you. But the biggest thing I can recommend is do not isolate yourself. If you make your life singularly about your spouse's career and you don't have anything for yourself, you likely won't get that level of fulfillment that most of us need in our hierarchy of needs. We need to have purpose as human beings. And so that can
Right.
help you find a purpose. Find your purpose. And don't be afraid of the community. If you don't like it, then withdraw from it. But if you don't try, you'll never know.
I love it. That's great advice. Great advice. Before you go, how can people find and connect with you, and how can they get hooked up with your practice, or even if maybe your practice isn't in their state, how can they tap into maybe other resources that you could help them with?
Yeah, so barberfamilycounseling.com is our website. My email is always there. My extension is always there for people to contact me. Military One Source can be a great resource for a lot of people that I think is underused. And kind of, I don't know if everyone knows about it, but they put together resource lists and things like that as well. And there's programs inside of that. So the Air Force Spouse of the Year this year, she works closely with that program, Danny. And so you can find all of us on the AFI MSOI website. And so, and kind of see what each of us are doing. But Danny works really close with, and she's a big advocate for getting out resources to spouses and dependents. And so that's a good resource. But if you ever need anything, and I mean this openly, I don't have like some weird block on my email. My email is Courtney at barberfamilycounseling.com. If you email my professional email, I will always respond to you. And if I don't know the answer, I will try to find you someone who does.
That's great. Thank you. Appreciate that. Um, that's great. Okay. Listeners, you heard it here. Reach out to Courtney for help. I love it. This has been amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all that you did. Amazing information. And absolutely love what you're doing in your space and sphere to try to change TRICARE and the military mental health resource world. So keep up the great work. I think it's obviously so needed. And congratulations again on being the
Thank you.
2024 Armed Forces Military Spouse of the Year. This was great talking to you. Thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it. Hello, viewers and listeners. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Tactical Treasures podcast. We've just finished up a very interesting and enlightening conversation with Dr. Courtney Barber, who is a Space Force mil spouse and was also named the 2024 Military Spouse of the Year. She is now the founder and CEO of Barber Family Counseling and Wellness. Pursue the path towards healing, growth, and wellness. That's the mantra behind the Barber Family Counseling and Wellness, which was founded by psychologist Dr. Courtney Barber. She serves as the practice owner and CEO. The Barber Family Counseling and Wellness is taking an innovative approach to mental health by recognizing the connection that exists between body and mind, the effects that one can have on the other, and the synergy that must exist between the two. The practice has established relationships with providers who share in this belief, allowing the group to provide counseling to individuals, couples, and families, medication management, ketamine-assisted psychotherapy, and other approaches to healing, growth, and wellness. They have 3 locations, 2 in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and 1 in Las Vegas, Nevada. To learn more and to tap into resources, go to barberfamilycounseling.com. There you can see all of the resources that they have. You can also connect with Dr. Courtney Barber through email or through phone. And if she is not licensed in your state, she will help connect you with resources. So check them out. barberfamilycounseling.com. Thank you for tuning in. You can find our Tactical Treasures podcast on all your favorite podcast streaming platforms, as well as Bet TV, American Grit, and our dedicated YouTube channel. We are now airing on Reach Across America Radio on Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. And if you miss that, please join us for the encore on Saturdays at 1 p.m. Eastern. You can also find Reach Across America Radio on the iHeartRadio app, the Odyssey app, and the TuneIn app. We are also proud to share that our JDog Foundation is a Reach Across America sponsorship group. For each $17 Veterans Wreath that you sponsor, $5 goes directly back to the JDog Foundation, whose mission is to prevent veteran suicide and heal veterans' mental health and PTSD. You can donate right now at reachacrossamerica.org/JDog. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again on another podcast real soon. Bye-bye now.